Good evening, everyone. I am a surprise guest for tonight's Book and Film Club, usually hosted by Robert Gwaltney and Kathy L. Murphy, the public queen, but I am a forgotten man. And I've just arrived home. I just slipped off my glasses and had to feed the cat. But I am here tonight for all of you to serve you as my new role as a butler for the public queen's Book and Film. And now we will begin with Robert Gwaltney. Let's talk about our wonderful film starring Carol Lombard and William Powell, one of my absolutely favorite authors. Robert, when was the first time you ever saw this film?
Thursday night is the very first time that I've ever
No.
viewed. Yeah, my Man Godfrey. Now, you're going to have to give me a few minutes to get accustomed to your handsomeness, Mr. Murphy. I'm going to have a sip of water because I'm palpitating.
You must like older gentlemen.
Always have. Soft spot for the older, sophisticated gent.
Oh, I kind of like the young ones too. So here we are tonight, Ruthie. Is this not fun? Do you not have the best time? I mean, if we can't, my co-host has told me that, gee, you should do this more often. And I have. I've been a ringmaster of a circus. I've been a pirate of the Caribbean. I have donned many times being everybody from, just all kinds of different people. So, but this was really a lot of fun because, of course, I do not have dark hair.
You look good as a brunette.
I've had my hair every color.
A smoky eye. Yeah, you look hot.
Yeah, well, maybe I should have been a man because I don't get to hear very often as a woman. So anyway, tonight we're here to discuss this film. And I can remember the first time that I saw it, I was a little girl. And I was caught up in the glamour, and I love scavenger hunts. I have hosted so many scavenger hunts in my life. In college, I had a scavenger hunt. I invited all my art friends, and I made up a list, and they broke into about 10 carloads of people. And on the list was things like a term paper with a grade of F, a roll of toilet paper signed by your favorite professor. It was all college related. And then we put a lot of fun things in there, like bring us a recent roadkill. It was Legend in Emporia, Kansas, where I was going to college, which also, as a matter of fact, is where my mother went as a speech and drama major when it was in Kansas State Teachers College. She was a speech and drama major, but I was an art major and geology major there, and we made our own parties. In fact, if I ever get Girlfriend Weekend going back live, I think it would be really fun to have a break where we do a scavenger hunt with the authors all in the same room. Wouldn't that be fun to come up with some really neat clues and do that? I also had went to a very infamous Gilligan's Island party where we all had to go as the characters of, that fateful day when the minnow was lost at sea. And that night I ended up being Mary Ann. I ended up being Ginger. And at one point, I think I was the captain. We kept taking turns, all my friends and I, going in the restroom and switching costumes with each other, both male and female. It was so much fun. I never in a million years thought I'd ever wear a grass skirt with a coconut bra, but I did that night. So you can see this is nothing new, Jacob. Jacob is brand new, Ruthie Landis. And Jacob is also been running a film podcast talking about films. He's been working with all kinds of things. So we welcome you, Jacob. We're so happy you're here tonight. But I watched it again, I think right after our last, when we decided we were going to do that. And I cried because I'd forgotten the underlying message again, Ruthie, of what was happening during that story of what I just thought was a scavenger hunt with a homeless man and a rich, debutante woman, but it was really much, much more than that. And I hope everybody will watch it, especially the younger generations, because the repartee and the lines. I mean, I shared one of those little gifts for the thing, and it had Carol Lombard going, "Do we need food?" Do you remember those? All through the whole film, she's going, "Darling, you need to eat." She goes, "I couldn't possibly eat a thing." And she goes, "Do we really need food?" And I was in hysterics about this because I did not remember any of these lines, but they were time very timely and priceless. So, Ruthie, have you gotten to see the film?
Well, do you know what? I finished it 1 minute before I got online.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Oh, I have to tell you, for someone who's, directed comedy and been in comedy, we've lost the sense of this, it's like they're like lightning, they're like a dragonfly. They just throw away the lines and they just slip right through it. And it's so brilliant. We watched Philadelphia Story the other day too. And just to watch them, they don't even take a breath. It's just boom, 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 land the line, boom, 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 boom. It was brilliant, really. And I hadn't seen it before. I hadn't
well,
seen.
Carol Lombard is hysterical in it, and this very privileged, ingenue, and her sister. The relationship between the sisters and the mother and father were priceless. And the mother, oh my, she. I'm telling you, every single person was so well cast, and then William Powell played it so straight. I mean, you know, coming in.
Well, yeah, he really sort of anchored their mad world. He was wonderful.
Right.
He
And
did, he
coming
played
in
it
with all
straight.
those
But
trays.
Kathy, you know what I found so fascinating about the opening of that film is that it's so non-traditional for that period of time. I mean, it opens in utter chaos.
It
Um,
does.
in utter chaos, and you don't really have a sense of where you are, and you're just immediately, you know, in the middle of the story. And I found that one of the most compelling elements of and when they were in the midst of the scavenger hunt and they were back at the Ritz Hotel. I think it's probably the loudest scene and chaotic scene, aside from the Civil War scene and Gone with the Wind.
Really.
From that
And
period of
bringing
time.
in the goat and then the baby goat and then
There was a monkey.
huh?
It was a
There
monkey.
was a monkey. I mean, it was just absolutely the craziest thing ever. But scavenger hunts it's like charades. It's a wonderful thing that people forget about after a while. And then I just saw it used in a movie the other day, and it was interesting. I was watching Joanne Lumley as she was doing the Silk Road, and she was in one of the Russian countries, and these kids out in front of the university were playing charades, and she was fascinated by how they were getting the answers so quickly, and she didn't know the language, but you could watch it play out. And I think those type of things we need to come back to, because it was so much fun. It's so entertaining, and you never forget it. You never forget hopping in the car, driving around like mad, trying to find all these things on the list. And it's just it's something that I think I one of the things I love about the 30s and 40s, even 50s, is teenagers used to get together and have parlor games and sing-alongs around the piano. And I'm telling you, I want to go to those parties. Those look like so much fun, where somebody sits down at the piano, everybody starts singing show tunes. I'm just going, those are the ones that I want to go to. And I also have had a fascination with New York from watching all those movies. They showed such glitz and glam, and we watched The Women, and now we've watched this one. It's very interesting, but it also brought a lot of I wonder if this movie really, if I had time to do any research if it brought any social change because of what was happening with, and what a lovely way to talk about people that have been marginalized by not having a home. Forgotten men.
So I don't know, Kathy, if it brought about social change, but it was definitely making a political message.
Oh, it was.
I did just do a smidge of research, and the term forgotten man, I think, was first used politically in the 1800s. Then I think Eisenhower dusted it off and used it.
Really?
Yeah. And
Well,
I believe it was Eisenhower in reference to the Hoovervilles.
wow. Well, that's interesting. But you know, Carol Lombard, she was a trip, and the gowns, I mean, the clothing
Oh my
that they
goodness.
wore was
Gorgeous.
just absolutely, you know, the pantsuits of that era, and the pajamas they slept in. I just
Ridiculous. When Carol Lombard woke up with that ostrich on her head, I mean, that was insane. How do you sleep in that?
I remember when I went to the Hearst Mansion and I got to see the bedrooms. They were all done like that with the satin in amethyst and peach quilted, beds that were so opulent, and the little feather mules that the women used to slip on, and all that. They wore underwear, but it was more like tap pants. They were like shorts with lace, and they flared.
I'm
And
wearing them now.
huh?
I'm wearing them now.
Well, I used to have a whole bunch of them, and I went to a estate sale, and this lady sold all of, they were selling all this ladies' lingerie from the 30s and 40s, and it was just gorgeous. And I bought all of it, and in some move that all disappeared, but they had little snaps on the side of the tap pants, and they were just beautiful tissue, like just lovely things. But it is, we don't see that kind of style anymore. Everybody's looking for the best bargain, and America shops Walmart. So which brings me up this smoking jacket. Well, I watched all these movies, and I always envied the men's smoking jackets. Sometimes they had velvet, they were brocaded, and this one has a belt that has tassels that hang on the ends, And I was in, do you know Daffy's in New York? Have you ever heard of Daffy's? Mm-hmm. Well, the Daffy's that I used to shop at was this gigantic department store right by the World Trade Center. And when I go to the World Trade Center for my sales conferences as a book publisher's rep, I couldn't wait to run out at the end of the day, coming down from that, now what is airspace. And right across the street was Daffy's. And Daffy's was the designer outlet for past seasons. I mean, decades old seasons of designer clothes. I think I paid $4.99 for the smoking jacket. It's all lined in satin. It's just gorgeous. And I just couldn't believe that it was like $4.99, and they have the original sticker price on everything. I actually bought an outfit for my daughter when she was a little girl that was made by an Israeli designer. It had a price tag of $1,600 on it for this. It was a velvet jacket for a little girl, velvet jacket, but it had sheer georgette to the floor.
Wow.
And then underneath it, they were velvet bell bottoms. And so her torso showed, and she was 7 years old, and it was like $1,600. I go, why? Kind of understand why a child wouldn't wear, but I got that outfit for my daughter, and I bought another black outfit for my girls wore it to my Christmas party, and they go, and they had on leopard fur coats, and people go, where did you get that outfit? I said, oh, I picked it up in New York. It's by an Israeli designer. And they're all just looking at me. But, it was pennies on the dollar. But that department store came down with the World Trade Centers.
Yeah.
It was just went, it was devastated. In fact, city block around it was devastated. But I used to love to go to Daffy's and buy their clothes. But um, it's it had a lot of things that looked like that era, and I've collected a lot of things from that era. So, but back to the film. The film, I'm not sure, was that based on a book? Do you know, Robert?
I don't know that it was based on a
I don't
book.
think it was based on a book, but whoever wrote the screenplay was a comedy genius, because it wasn't the kind of where you just ha ha ha, it was kind of one of those where you had to think about it a minute and then you go, oh my gosh, how clever, but the mother and the relationship between the family members, and oh my gosh, what was the guy's name that was the who was going to be creating the songs, the songwriter?
Carlo.
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 Carlo, was he Russian? What was he?
Well, we don't know.
Carlo was probably from Nebraska,
Yeah.
It was played by actor Misha Auer.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't know. Misha.
Well, he must have some. I don't know where Misha would be from, but
at that one point, he's singing, he's playing the piano and he's singing the song, something like 2 words to it. Oh, Chloe, and he's like that. And then she says to him, oh, that's just beautiful. The mother does. What's the name of that song? And it's just the 2 words. Oh, Chloe.
Oh, I know. It was so funny. When I said that he's probably from Nebraska, because one of the first salons I worked in up near Kansas City, in Lawrence, Kansas, we had a guy, this is the 70s, who worked with us, and he wore jumpsuits. This was the 70s, like towards mid to late 70s. He wore jumpsuits that zipped up, and he left them unzipped a long ways down with the gold chains. And he wore clogs, and he had his hair cut in a bowl, wedge. Remember when the guys wore the wedges?
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyway,
I had one. I was a little boy though.
well, he wasn't a little boy. He was a grown man. But he talked with the strangest accent. And I asked him, it was something like Nars. I don't know what his name was, but I said, Nars, where are you from? And he said, I'm from Holland. And I go, oh, well, that was an accent I didn't recognize. And then one day, he had a lot of women who used to come to him to get his haircut. They were always taking him out to drinks. And he came back to the shop, and I was still working. And I said, geez, I cannot believe that, and he goes, oh yeah, they buy me drinks and give me $20 tips. And that was a lot of money back then. And I said, wow, well, looks like, coming from Holland to Lawrence, Kansas was really worked out well for you. And he goes, I'm from Nebraska. And he said, if you take on a foreign accent, people tip you bigger. Wow. And I said, oh gosh, that would be so, maybe I could do that now, but I sure couldn't do it back then. I could talk like Natasha, like Bullwinkle and Rocky. So, but anyway, yes, I'm.
Can I just say something about the film? Yes. I have to say, after watching just last week, we watched Philadelphia Story 2, which George Cukor, and so I have to say something, as flighty and silly and light and glib, yes, as they were, there really always was a very deep. And I felt like at first I was like going, where's this going? What is his, but yeah, but the forgotten man was that he forgot himself. I mean, he tells the story that he was going to commit suicide, And then when he tells off the older sister and says, "You're a spoiled brat." I mean, in that scene, he doesn't tell her until later, "I was that spoiled brat. I didn't know who I was." And it wasn't just his broken heart from uh, the woman, which we don't ever know much about what happened with that, but just that he forgot himself. That it isn't just the forgotten man is, a homeless guy that nobody cares about. It was that when he says, "You all helped me find myself again," and a purpose, something, people need to live a purpose driven life, right? And he didn't have any, but just all the fluff. And we all think, "Oh, we would just love that. We just love that. We just love that." Um, but clearly he didn't. And at the end, I mean, yes, it's a silly ending and she comes after him and she's a Lulu. I mean, she seems like she's mentally ill
I
herself.
can't
But
even imagine, but she lived a life of privilege. She made things happen by just commanding it. And I think it watching that made me realize how many things that we just all take for um, granted about privilege. I mean, I don't care where you come from. I mean, I didn't come from the kinds of means these people came from, but until you've actually put yourself into those worlds, you don't really understand. That's the wonderful thing about having the book and film club, right, Jacob? When we discuss the film, we learn more about ourselves in these stories. I mean, the stories we most relate to, or the ones we most love, are the ones that we can see ourselves in the similar, you know, kind of situation. I remember when I first watched The Wizard of Oz. Oh my God, I grew up in Kansas. I wanted to go over the rainbow too. And then the one thing that she dreamed for her whole life, she found out she had it all along. She just, you don't see it when you're in it. You have to kind of almost go away for a while and to understand, what you've got. But we all need to be really thankful. And it was a wonderful movie. And I hope everybody watches it. I hope everybody was as moved as I was and entertained, because it's a highly entertaining film. But that William Powell, he's always been my favorite. I just loved him. And it just makes me want to go watch more of these, doesn't it, you guys?
Both William Powell and Carol Lombard were nominated for Academy Awards for that film that year. They didn't win. My one criticism of the film, and I think Ruthie touched on this a bit, I felt like I wanted Carol Lombard's character at times to be a bit more grounded, because I felt that it was a little unrealistic for William Powell's character, Godfrey, to fall in love with someone who was so incredibly flighty. I did want to, I believe that her acting, I mean, I love her, but I don't feel like that it was nuanced enough to be able to make it believable enough for me to truly believe that there would have been a happy ending with Godfrey and with Irene Bullock.
It kind of reminded me of in The Great Gatsby. I could not figure out what everybody found so absolutely fascinating about this woman of their dreams. She was so idolized, and the woman was just privileged, and even more than that, she was helpless. And I do not like to watch women that are helpless. I like to have women, I like to watch women who come into their own, or they figure things out. They become empowered by the situation they're put in. And she was as ditzy at the end as she was at the beginning.
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge this just a little bit. Even though I felt that she was certainly over the top, but they constructed a family that was over the top. I mean, they were all over the top, right? So they created a convention where once you walked in that house, they were bonkers, you know, and the maid immediately said, you know, butlers come and go. I mean, it's a crazy house. So you think, well, how did her character, who did have a heart, she did have a heart.
She did.
She wasn't developed. She wasn't, you know, psychologically developed. But what she learned to do and what they made fun of was that she learned to be an actor, and she would turn it on and turn it off, and it was, I thought, a survival mechanism in their crazy household. And what the only thing I could rationalize, I mean, I think they did whip off that end way too quickly and without any kind of weight or depth to it. But what I did feel was that from the very beginning, her attraction to him was moving to him.
She was, in a way, very innocent, you know.
Yes. And that he was moved by the fact that even though she came from this wealth and everything, that she kept looking past who he, you know, appeared to be as the homeless man. And I think that's something we have to look at, you know, is that she was the, you know, the one character. I mean, then the father did too. Then the father was led to look past, you know, who they thought he was, into just liking him for who he was. So if I look at that, I think that's how they rationalized the screenplay. But then they whipped it off too quickly at the end.
They did. I think that, well, William, I think that immediately Irene is endearing, even in her physicality with him. And you know, she takes hold of his hand. You know, she guides him into the hotel, and it's really sweet and charming. And she is very childlike. I think I would have liked to have seen her a little bit more depth gradually throughout and at the end. I actually found her sister Cornelia to be one of the more compelling and interesting characters. She seemed to be grounded. She wasn't absurd. In my opinion, I would say that if you had to define an antagonist, it was her sister Cornelia, obviously.
Yeah, she was cruel sometimes, you know, pretty cruel.
And I think she was cruel because she was so unhappy and jealous of her sister. They were jealous of each other. But, you know, when I think about my sisters and family, there were incidents where they would say things to each other where I thought there would be a cat fight, and they didn't have one. And that's kind of surprised me. But I also think that he did say in the movie, the character, William Powell's character, said she saved him because
Yes, he did.
he
Yeah.
did say that. And I think he was like, I may have had this relationship with this other person who broke my heart, but this woman saw through the facade and saw who I really was. And so that's why he kind of just let her take over. And she was a take charge kind of person, you know.
And then he said in that kitchen scene when he was saying goodbye to go do his thing with the dump, and he said to her, well, you know, we'll always be friends, and you know, you changed me and you saw through me. um I think he wanted her to grow up, but he also said to her, I want you to be proud of me. And I would agree with Robert in that, which is, you know, we see what she saw in him, but we don't see what he saw in her at the
I
end.
think it was just that he felt like she saved him. She came right when he was on the brink
Mhm.
of the precipice, you know. And I think that, but they didn't really develop it enough. But I'll tell you another character in the film that I loved more than I love the character players. The maid, the woman in the kitchen, the
Yeah.
woman behind the scenes who she says, "Oh, if you can make it through this, you can make it through anything," you know. And and then her breaking down and crying when he said he's leaving. It was so touching because she'd fell under his spell too.
Mhm.
It was really really she had a small part, but she really gave it her all, and it was totally believable. In fact, she was probably the most realistic person there. Most of the other people were so, I don't even know how to describe it. They were kind of, do you really know anybody like that?
Mm-mm.
I don't, I can't think of
Well, I
anybody.
think, as a therapist, I'm going to say they were all a little borderline, kind of mentally ill a little bit,
Definitely, definitely. And riding a horse into the house and putting it
Well,
in.
I thought that's interesting too. Something about alcohol was a through line because remember, he ordered the lemonade and then he said he wouldn't because it seemed like he was trying to get himself back on his feet, but then he said no, he drink, and then he came back to the house and he was drunk, and they had to have been completely drunk, those girls, to ride a horse.
Well,
And
they didn't even remember it,
Right. Well, it was the mother who
and the mother was drunk too. She had to have, yeah.
and then of course Cornelia blamed it on Irene. Irene Irene rode the horse into the library.
Right.
Oh, that's
I
right.
lo-
That's right. And then I'll tell you the opening scene where he starts out as the butler. I thought, who lets somebody come into their bedroom that early in the morning? I just thought, would people really do that? They don't know anything about this guy. And here he is, I brought you your, whatever. And I just thought that's pretty amazing. They didn't do any background checks or anything. And I thought it's a wonder they weren't all killed or robbed. Well, they kind of were. They kind of were robbed there for a little while, with old Carlos and everything that was going on with his shenanigans, and then the infamous pearl necklace under the mattress. That was pretty crazy. But it was a great film, and I did not remember it. I watched it, I think, when I first moved here about 8 years ago, and I told Robert I couldn't think of the name of it. He found it for me. And when I watched it again, it was a completely different movie to me. Do you ever have that happen, Jacob? Do you watch a movie and then you watch it years later and it's totally different for you?
Yeah, because we watch like so many movies that you're like, oh, this is a really good movie, but then if you don't see it till like 5 or 8 years later, sometimes your perspective when you watch it again is totally different from when you saw it the first time because you're in a different headspace and different space than you were when you first watched it.
I remember the first time I saw Animal House. I laughed so hard I thought I was going to die. And I recently watched that movie the other day and I thought it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. I don't know why. I thought it was so funny. I mean, it was just, you know, hazing and college fraternity life. And it was really disturbing to me the second time around. But I thought John Belushi was tremendous, and Tim Matheson was just, the cad. He was hilarious. But the second time I watched it, and then I've watched films before where I couldn't stand it the first time, and then the second time I thought it was the best movie I've ever seen. I think you have to be in exactly the right move for the right movie at the right time to really. And I watch movies over and over, and sometimes it isn't until like the third watching that I go, oh, that's what's happening. And example is watching the Academy Award movies. A lot of them you watch real quick because you want to see it before the voting, and you miss little nuances like in Minari and White Tiger and what was another? The Sound of Metal.
Mhm.
I think I will go back a later day and watch them again where it's not so fast paced, just to kind of, because they're kind of, Minari's like a slower film, you know. It's not one of those that's like the one we just watched. So it's great to talk to people because it's, to me it's always, did everybody like the film? Did you enjoy it and find it
Oh,
entertaining?
absolutely.
Oh.
I enjoyed seeing, there are not many old films I've not seen, and it was wonderful to have an opportunity to
I can't
experience.
believe you hadn't seen
I
them.
know. I'm surprised I've not seen My Man Godfrey. My only other criticism, and this is extremely superficial, is that I hated Miss Lombard's hairdressing. I
Oh,
hated her
yes,
hairstyle.
her hair was terrible.
It was awful.
It was like weird poofs, and
Yes.
yeah, they did not have this. There's some shows you watch where the hairdressing is so intricate and incredible, you're just kind of blown away by how, you know, they, it was hairdressing. And at that particular time, it wasn't, just a haircut or a style. It was literally arranging the hair into certain shapes, usually to go with hats and different things. And I'll tell you who was the probably Lana Turner and Betty Grable. You never, in anything they ever did, you never saw their hair. It wasn't just impeccable, you know? And nowadays, and I've sat in and watched some movie sets, and it's like they don't really put a whole lot of work into hair in so many films. I mean, it's their hair doesn't even look good. I mean, I watch films where I go, why didn't they do their roots? I mean, or have you done that where you watch a show and you go, why didn't she get her roots done before she did that movie? It's not anything to do with the part. It's like she's got, red hair, but she's got, grown out brown roots or something.
So Jacob, this is a part of the show where we get catty.
No, that works. I'm always up for that part.
Oh my gosh. Well,
All right. Can I ask you a question, Kathy? Okay. So I want to know, you said, William Powell is one of your favorites. So I have to tell you, I don't remember, I wasn't remembering a lot of his work. He wasn't conventionally handsome. He wasn't Cary Grant handsome. He wasn't, he wasn't that way. What, because I found him extremely compelling too.
It was his demeanor. He had he wasn't haughty or conceited, but you could tell that he had within him a strong self-importance. Mm-hmm. And when he would walk in, he commanded everybody's attention. That fascinated me. But
and his voice, don't you think his voice was
very nice,
really interesting voice?
So did you know that William Powell and Carole Lombard had been married prior and divorced prior to them making this film?
No.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
No.
And honestly, that's unbelievable.
It is.
That's really unbelievable. How long were they married?
I'm not certain. I'm assuming not for a long period of time. And in my reading, apparently Carole Lombard, when tensions would be high on the set, she would intertwine 4-letter words into her dialogue. Apparently, they're just to shock, and let out her frustration. Apparently, we're gonna have to search for this, but apparently there are blooper reels with her cussing during the filming of My Man Godfrey.
You can find a lot of bloopers on YouTube, because I spent the other night watching bloopers on Indian films that I've watched, and I was in hysterics over scenes that were so dramatic and everything, and they're just like on the floor. Why do we like bloopers so much? Why do we love it when people, my first thought comes to the Carol Burnett show, when they would all get on there and Carol would go do that eye thing, and Twitter and, get it twitching. And they would all, it was Tim Conway, who hardly ever broke into a laugh, would have all the other actors turning their heads, trying to keep a straight face. But there's something compelling about watching mistakes too.
Well, it breaks down the wall, don't you think? It breaks down the wall. And, there's a part of you that wants to believe that the movie is real. And then there's another part that wants to realize that it's not. And, a wonderful, wonderful acting teacher of mine said about comedy that and I know this to be true, you have to be almost always on the edge of the giggle. Like as an actor, you can't break.
No.
And you have to play it straight, but there's an internal kind of giggle that is realizing I guess, if humor is about point of view, that the actor both knows they're in the scene and they also know the scene is funny.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. And so when that, mask comes down, I don't know, it just touches us, I think. I love it too.
I think some of the times I've laughed the hardest in films are when I least expected it. I remember when Arthur came out with Liza Minnelli and
Oh, what's his name? The short guy.
oh my
Whoa.
Dudley Moore.
Dudley Moore.
I laughed.
Jake, make a wish. We said that at the same time.
I know,
I
right?
actually laughed so hard at that film that my sister and I went to it, and I don't know where we were. We were out of town. That we turned around and went back in and paid to watch it again because we missed all the lines because we were laughing so hard.
Sure.
And again, years later, Jacob, I went back and saw it, and I thought it was really sad because he was such an alcoholic. Isn't it funny how things that you can? Why is it when Milton Berle or all those older comedians would play drunks, we would always laugh. There goes my cat. Anyway, and now a lot of times
it has to do, Kathy, with just social awareness now.
Yeah, I think so.
I think you're right. I think you're right because there was his drunken scene in this movie too.
And that surprised me because he said he didn't drink.
That's odd to me. That seemed a little that particular whole bit threw me. I want to share this. Ruthie was talking about how witty and how smart and how quickly that they would shoot these lines, and I love this. This is when Godfrey is meeting Molly the maid.
Yes.
So this is Godfrey. May I be frank? Molly, is that your name? No, my name is Godfrey. All right, be frank.
And I thought she was going to call him Frank after that, because it was such a great setup.
Right.
Well, didn't you think that him coming in drunk was the turning point?
Probably. Yeah.
I mean, he changed after that, right?
Yes, because we're at that point, we're in the third act.
Right. So there was something, I don't know what their rationale was around that, but there was something about, when he's exposed, right? Because Cornelia sees him at the restaurant with Tommy Gray, right? And then he is drinking the lemonade and then he says, no, get me some more of that stuff. And then the next thing you know, I wasn't sure of the timing of that because he came back but there was something.
Also, my question was the second time I watched it was, how come he stayed on with them being the butler when everybody's knowing the gag? They're getting in on it, and yet he stays on. I think if they had played that up because he stayed on to be near her.
Yes, I agree with you.
But maybe that was supposed to be there, but because they've been married before, that didn't work out.
I don't know. But also, you felt like he did have as much as he was impacted and changed, he did have a mission for each one. The only two characters he didn't impact really was the mother and Carlo. Like he didn't really have any impact.
Carlo ran for his life, I guess.
But he did affect the father.
Yes.
And he did change Cornelia, because that last scene with her when she thought, I think, that he might fall in love with her, I mean, she was very humbled. She looked like she was going to come to tears in that. So he did impact those people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Ruthie, you were saying earlier that there were certain that there's a beneath this screwball comedy there's poignancy. Like if you deconstruct it, there's this line that Carol Lombard says, a scavenger hunt is exactly like a treasure hunt, except in a treasure hunt you find something you want, and in a
Yeah,
scavenger hunt you find something that nobody wants.
nobody wants.
Yeah.
And isn't that the first time he says the forgotten man? That
Yes.
might be.
And there's this other moment that stood out to me. So Guthrie says, "Are you want?" This is when they're wanting to find something exciting about this forgotten man. Are you wanted by the police? That's just the trouble. Nobody wants me.
Yeah.
There were just these really
Mhm.
sad moments in the midst of all of this humor.
We're
Um,
invisible.
so
They felt,
there is, the screenplay writer was really brilliant in how they were able to weave the story.
Yeah.
it
And
was
you felt like also that his own family, I mean, that was an interesting through line too.
Mhm.
When Tommy Gray, recognizes him and all that, and then Cornelia threatens him to disgrace him in front of his family. I mean, there really is something subtextual that never gets really revealed about.
it's almost like we missed another act. It could have had another, um, it just wasn't fully developed, especially towards the end. It's like it abruptly ended. But I
Yeah.
find out a lot with the older movies. You'll
So
be going along and the story's got you and everything. Then next thing you know, they show the couple with a baby or something, and you're going, what?
I want to tell you, I wrote 3 film scripts that were comedies. And I have to tell you, it's really hard to end a comedy well. And when you watch a lot of comedies, even some of the funniest, best ones that you'll laugh and laugh and laugh, it's really hard to, unless you can get the character to have some kind of epiphany, but still have humor there, it is hard to end a comedy well. And
Do you
I
think that's why sometimes at the end of movies they'll show the bloopers?
well, I know there's something kind of unsatisfying. We had a devil of a time finishing our scripts, and then it made me watch, and even people, I love Mel Brooks and I love all those kinds of movies. And Albert Brooks, I love Albert Brooks movies and stuff. They make me laugh till I want to peep. But you know what? A lot of them poop out at the end. And I don't know what that is. You guys are, I'm a nonfiction writer, but from a fiction writing point of view, what happens in a drama that doesn't happen?
right. I
Right.
think I don't know. I don't write comedy.
I
So
think comedy is the hardest
Yeah.
Oh,
genre
it's
to
so
write.
hard. It's
You
so
can
hard.
make people cry pretty easy, but to make them laugh hard in a book,
It's
and I told
challenging.
everybody, I don't know if I'd laugh as hard now because it's been years since I read this book. But if you haven't read Paul, and I believe his last name's pronounced Fag. It's Feig, Fag. He is a huge television writer now. But at Book Expo, I was taking all my signed books to the pack and ship, and my friend and I looked down, and there was a book on the floor, and it said, "Kick Me." And it showed this dorky picture of him as a preteen, you know, maybe it was several shots and everything. And we both started laughing. She goes, "Grab that book." And I grabbed it. And we read it to each other aloud on the plane in a huddle. And the stewardesses, I thought, were going to kick us off the plane
Oh
because
my gosh, is that the book where he's in the band? There's a picture of the band on the cover. Kick Me.
maybe I can't remember now, but the funniest story in the book is when he comes home and his mother finds him, and he's got on makeup and a wig and stuff. It's just one of those priceless moments. You just gotta read it and you go, oh my God, what would you do? And everybody has those moments where your kids, you do things you're not supposed to, supposedly social mores you're not supposed to do, and then you get caught. But it was hysterical in the book. We cried over, and he writes for like movies and television like crazy, but it's called Kick Me, and it's one of the funniest books I've ever read. And it's hard to make me laugh in a book out loud where I snort and I have to run to the restroom. But that's one of them that I have read, and I think I mentioned it in my book because it was so funny. But I mean, those stewardess came up to us 3 times and said, ladies, you're going to have to keep it down. And we're just like going, seriously, people are trying to sleep, and we got the flashlight, we're reading these pages. It was priceless. But yeah, that's a good point. But that's why I don't understand why there is an Academy Award for comedy.
Yep.
That's probably why Carol Lombard and them, because it was a kind of a comedy dramedy type movie. And have you noticed that comedies never get the attention like a drama or
No, and as for actors, I did mostly comic
and you
stuff.
have to be genius to do it.
Oh, it's so hard. It's
Because-
so hard.
I think you fare better if you're writing a dramedy where you have those poignant moments woven throughout. So
Right.
you have those dramatic moments paired with humor. I think it's easier to land those.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because when I wrote my book, everybody goes, "Oh, your book is so funny," and I go, "Really? I didn't think it was funny at all. I really didn't. The cover was
How
funny.
dare you?
The cover was funny, but they go, "Oh, what a romp of a read," and I go, I'm talking about how I grew up in chaos and dysfunction, and everybody thought it was funny.
People might find her misfortune hilarious.
But it is a compliment. I think it's
It
a
is.
compliment.
It is, but I go, well, and I have kind of I have a warped sense of humor. I mean, I've had some crazy moments in my life with authors where I've just completely lost it. And I'm going to tell another John Barrett story. I'm going to tell this story because you can't make, the funniest comedy is really based on real life. But he had just written Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil and just gone New York Times, and they were in I don't know how many printing. But I had him come to Jefferson, Texas, and we decided that I had friends that own a big plantation home. Since the book was Southern and Gothic, we would do the book signing out there. And we, afterwards, the bookstore's owners and I and the author, we all went to a really beautiful restaurant in town that's in a home and had dinner. And evidently, the host at the plantation home was imbibing on the free wine that was brought in and drank a little bit more than probably he should have when we went to dinner. And the waiter came around and took our drink orders. And I want tea or coffee, water, wine, whatever. And he disappeared for a really long time. And I was sitting right across from John Barrett, right across from him. And then the couple who owned the thing were to the side. And he said, "Oh my God," he goes, he turned to his wife and he said, "I can't remember what I ordered for tonight. We hadn't ordered anything but a drink, And we're all kind of looking at him and everything. And John Barrett turned to him, I swear to God, and he said, "I believe you ordered the hot dog." He did not crack a smile, just stoic, And he said, "You ordered the hot dog." And this guy goes, "Oh my God, did I order a hot dog?" And she said, "No, we haven't even ordered yet, you silly monkey," And I'm kicking John under the table, and he just takes a drink of his drink and just looks at me like nothing. And that just made me I spit my wine all across the table. Everybody looks at me and they go, "Why are you looking at me?" And I said, well, because, you know, he didn't laugh. He just said it straight. He would do this to me everywhere we would go. He would deliver some line and just then reach for an hors d'oeuvre or something and act like nothing happened. And I'm just spitting I just taken a drink, and he goes, the hot dog. And it just went everywhere. But that was one of the funny, you can't make stories up like this. You can't. So, and how did that story end? We all had a really good time. But it's a great film, and I hope we'll watch more of them. Any questions? Jacob, do you have anything you want to throw in?
No, all I know is that they said William Powell, whenever he would get in disagreement with the director, would get drunk and then not work that day because he had a hangover. So he would get drunk constantly.
Well, see, there's a lot of
True.
stories behind the stories are always fascinating. And that's why I think the Book and Film Club, and the more we delve into these things, I'm always learning something new. You know, I just realized that part of my mustache.
I know. I was going to tell you your mustache was melting,
Oh my
darling.
gosh, I could almost do the, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
What are you doing later?
Well, you don't know what I've got on underneath this. Having a little breathless wine. You know, actually, it's Mother's Day weekend, and my kids have been with me all day, and we had a wonderful time with my grandson, and they went on to go visit their great grandmother, and then tomorrow we're joining my sister. So it's kind of a busy, busy weekend. So, I mean, I barely got back in. I'm going, oh my gosh, Ruthie needs the link. Did I send Robert the link? I knew I'd send Jacob the link, but anytime I'm trying to figure out, you can set this up where we have a reoccurring,
Yeah.
but I don't know how to do that yet.
I'll talk you through it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. But, you know, the only reason you don't do the reoccurring is, you know, like in my case, I have to fabricate a new one each time because I don't want anybody knowing and just entering the room.
That's exactly what I've been told, and why
Yeah.
I've been generating.
You don't want people to crash the event. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
I still, even this, I post, these are recorded, Jacob, and I put them on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel. And even just sending it out to people, somehow, I don't know how it happens, people get on the channel and they put weird stuff. I mean, every time I put a good looking guy on there, oh man, here comes all these weird sites that you can link to. And then they go, oh, well, was he involved? No, there's no connection. Somebody just put it up there. So I try to take them down as fast as I can. But I think I'll probably just keep it the way it is, because I think you're right. Until they've got that infrastructure where people can't hack in, and God knows.
Well, they can, if they know that number, you know, like I will tell you, even though I had for 1 year, I just ended it last Sunday, a reoccurring support group during the pandemic, you know, I didn't tell them, but I had it as a reoccurring meeting, but each week I would send, here's the link, because I just didn't want anybody just dropping in that shouldn't drop in, or you know.
It's all this is going to be resolved soon, because they're working 24/7 on coming up with ways to make everything. I mean, I've seen the change since I had my girlfriend weekend virtual online book club convention, Zoomathon, to now, how much changes they've had. It's getting easy for me to do. It's just, you know, but I find that if people email me, then I know who's exactly getting online, and there's no surprises. So we'll continue to do this way. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what we want to watch next. You know, I feel like I'm hogging the choices, Robert. You know, maybe you should pick the one this time.
Gosh. Let's see. Well, what are some of the things we talked about in the past?
Well, I was thinking you've been talking about Auntie Mame for some time.
This is
Pat-
true. So do we
Patrick Dennis and
the
I
Rosalind Russell
actually,
version?
yeah, I actually have an Auntie Mame outfit that I wore.
Okay, well, it's going to be Auntie Mame next week, starring the lovely Miss Rosalind Russell.
Which
Perfect.
No, not Miss Rosalind Russell. Yeah,
love that
Rosalind
movie
Russell.
so much. I relate to the Rosalind Russell because here she is. Everybody goes, she's strong, she's brash, she's outspoken, but yet there's this underlying vulnerability of her being alone. And I understand that because I live by myself and I'm very and live in a very isolated. And now, as a matter of fact, I have a 2-year-old grandson who we watched a Bollywood film today. We had a blast. You guys, he loves the dance.
The dancing.
He's 2 years old and he's picking it up. And he also loves trucks. So he's just, and I'll see him again tomorrow, but I love being around him and love watching. My family doesn't get into the movies as much as I do. So I have a grandson that looks like it's going to be, you know,
Yeah.
it's going to be our little connection of what we like to do together. And I had a really good time watching my film today with him. But
Can,
we'll watch.
can I just say one thing to you, Kathy?
Uh-huh.
This is such a beautiful little story. And so in Chicago, there was a bank, and somebody rented space in the bank, and they would show all these really old movies. I mean, dating before even this, right? And my dad was an actor, so my parents were complete trivia film buffs and everything. And my son, from a very young age, would go with them on Saturday night to see these old movies. And it was a date they had every Saturday night. Sometimes I would go, sometimes I wouldn't. And here my son is now in his early 30s. And he remembers all those films. And so I just want to say it is a deep connection. You know, it is something very, very special. And when you just said that, I would like really choked me up because it was their Saturday night date night. They were going to go see some really old film. And, you know, he was quirky because of it, but it was great.
Well, I don't know if you saw on Facebook this week, but things just get put placed in front of me. And there's a group of boys, they're all brothers and cousins and family members in Nigeria. And they are movie buffs. And they all get together and there's a bunch of them. And they watch movies. And then what they did is they started recreating scenes from the movies. And then they would dub in the real actors' voices like James Earl Jones, and they got the little boy with a fake mustache like me, and he's doing these. I don't know if that what the actor was, but they'll show the scenes side by side on the screen.
Wow.
And Netflix did this big story on them and how these are probably going to be our future filmmakers, about how these boys found out. And it reminded me of, I watched The Little Rascals when I was a kid, and my sisters and I would put on shows. We'd clothespin the sheets to the clothesline and dress our dog up, and we'd have magic acts. And I'm the barber from Seville, like Alfalfa. And we'd charge, a nickel or a dime or whatever for the show, and the neighborhood kids, and they'd all sit, and then they'd say, now our turn. And so after the show, then everybody just kind of had free for all on talent show night. But it's how we entertained ourselves, is acting out the stories. And I think it's important that sense of childlike play, or these movies that we're showing on here, I pick a lot of films that nobody has seen in a long time, or maybe never seen. I had no idea, Robert, you hadn't seen that. But for anybody who hasn't seen Annie Mame, it's a romp of a story. And my favorite scene is when she puts on the riding outfit with the joffers and the two small boots and goes fox hunting, and she doesn't know how to ride a horse. It is absolutely probably one of the most comedic stories that play out in that film. But I just loved it. And there's a lot of sadness in that story too. So, but I have multiple copies of that book because I've always really related to that character. And so that's a perfect one. Let's do that one next week. So that'll be fun. And then we need to start kind of getting ahead of ourselves and coming up with a list, Robert. We'll have to get together.
Absolutely. We'll brainstorm this week.
We'll brainstorm. And I know everybody, it's Saturday night. So if you haven't seen My Man Godfrey, it's, I watched it, I think. Did we watch it on YouTube?
I watched it on Vudu.
Vudu?
I watched it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I think it's every
Jacob, where did you see it, Jacob?
Watched it on Prime.
Prime.
Yeah.
And I may have watched it there, but I think it was up on YouTube too. I'm surprised, and I'm not paying for the expensive channel. I'm surprised at how many films are up on, I'll tell you one that just came to me. That was my favorite movie when I was growing up, Harvey. Harvey with
James Stewart.
With James Stewart, Jimmy Stewart. That was one of my favorite films of all time. And, you know, things like that you'll see on YouTube all the time. But I was actually scrolling through on Amazon Prime. My God, they're getting so much stuff that I found that Joanna Lumley's Tour of India series. It's 3 parts. It's fabulous. And then if you love it, watch The Silk Road. And I went to countries I was telling Robert, I went to countries I had never even dreamed of. And that woman is hilarious. She does accents. She's learning everywhere she goes. And she's just like me. She's mean on scarves.
Mad about scarves. You know, I love her. I learned, I came to know her through watching Absolutely Fabulous.
Oh, yes. And one of my favorite films of all time was based on a 1932 British classic called Cold Comfort Farm.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanne Lumley played the woman that was her friend that collected the corsets and the brassieres. And she had a whole room where she just displayed her, and she's hilarious. But if you get a chance to watch that, I watched it on, I think it was on the BBC. It was on the BBC, but I watched it through Amazon Prime, and it was outstanding. I just binge watched it. It was so good. But anyway, y'all, let's have a great week. Let's keep reading. Jacob, thank you. Keep, tag me on anything you're doing, and I'll share it with everybody, because, people that are film buffs will go to other shows too. What's your next thing that you've got coming up?
Actually, like in 5 minutes, I'm doing my recap show of Days of Our Lives. It has over 2,000 views last week. So
wow,
we got a good chemistry with the people that are co-hosts, and so I found a really good group of people, because that's the key of finding good panelists to do it. So,
well, yeah. I know some wonderful, I've had a lot of the soap opera stars come to my annual book club convention, like Tina Sloan. I also had, oh gosh, why can't I think of Gloria Loring, whose son and husband were both singers. I've had her come, but yeah, soap opera stars have diehard fan base,
And some of those fans on there are crazy. So yeah, I'm used to dealing with them, but it's really fun. So yeah.
Well, tag me and I'll share it with everybody.
Okay, I will.
I'll listen in, and thank you. Anytime you want to join us, come on board. We'd love to have you, and we're thrilled that you were here. Ruthie, you've just got to be a standard on the show. You bring so much insight, and you have the expertise. Robert and I are just fans. I mean,
No, you're not. I'm learning so much. You guys know so much about the behind the scenes. I mean, I can look at it, just at the movie, but when you just said that Carol Lombard and him were married before and divorced, are you kidding me? How do you find that out?
No
How-
idea. And I read every biography.
I don't know how you found that out.
I don't know.
It's
That's
just
amazing.
a rabbit hole.
Well, you know, that's what we're doing. We're going down all these rabbit holes. We're all with Alice in Wonderland going to these film adventures. So we will see you all next week. And you know, who knows? I may come as Patrick. So
And I'll be anti-mame.
okay, it's a challenge. I wonder if I can do it. I can do it. Okay, you do it, I'll do it. And everybody dress up. Everybody have fun with it. I mean, if you want to bring something to it, be the director, be the, you know, be the Edith Head, be the costume designer. We could just, you know, it's all about creating our own world that we want to be in. That's what this is. We can't get out. We can't do. Oh, before we go, Ruthie, I heard that Broadway is opening up. Is that true?
Soon.
Really?
Soon. Yeah, they're gonna have to figure out a, you know, you're not gonna be packed in. You know, it's gonna be
Yeah.
just like the movie theaters that are starting to open up, you know.
Well, I just went by two businesses that were huge today when we were headed out that have completely closed up since COVID. And I just never thought I would ever see those businesses shut down. It has hurt theaters so badly. But yeah, I keep us posted on that. I don't hear anything. And, you know, Chicago does a lot of stuff too. So I just want to know, how are they going to do that? I
Well-
still keep having people emailing me, you're having girlfriend weekend in person. No, I'm not. It's virtual and online until I get everybody is vaccinated. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we can have just as much fun. And I want to keep I would
I learned so much. I want to tell you at the last one, you know, I just was like a sponge soaking it up. I learned
get
so
ready, because this year Mandy and I have been working all week on all the bloggers, getting all the authors on board on all the things. It's gonna be amazing. It's amazing. And I want to tell you, Ruthie, before you go, and you too, Jacob, if you ever get a chance, now I went online to the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival in New Orleans this year, and I was disappointed. I have to say I was. But when they open it back up, if you are a theater person, you just never know who is going to be there. And every time I'm blown away. Carol Baker's been there. You know, John Waters was there one year. I mean, you get on the elevator and you go, oh my God, I saw them on Broadway. They get a lot of theater people because of Tennessee Williams, you know, plays and everything. So if you get a chance to go to that, it is one of the, besides my weekend, it is my favorite one to go to, because I love Southern Gothic. I love New Orleans. And it's literally to go down there and just sit on a balcony somewhere with your little hurricane or whatever. You can watch a drama playing out right before you on the street. So it's absolutely fantastic. And it's usually about this time in April, you know, this past April every year. So till next week, we're going to be Annie Mame, and that was based upon a book. And Patrick Dennis was the author of that book, and it is a classic. And the book really reads very much like the way they did the Rosalind Russell classic film. So we'll see you next week, Robert. And
Good to
keep
see you.
those little tidbits coming, man. That's
yeah,
awesome.
love it.
Okay.
Good
Time
night,
to close the
everybody.
popcorn.
Bye,
I'm going to the
everybody.
movies. Bye,
Bye.
Jacob. Bye, Ruthie.
Bye.
Bye, Robert.
Good night.
Bye.